Learning is changing all around the world. The seeds of tomorrow are here. The Learning Planet already exists, but its impact can only increase by fostering our awareness and our ability to learn how to learn collectively.
I think that we have to get inspired, get empowered, and be able to learn to contribute so that every one of us can take care of oneself, take care of the others, and take care of the planet.
Hello Marie-Cécile, thank you for inviting me. As I told you, I heard about your documentaries entitled In the Mood for a Learning Planet. You know, as a citizen, I'm deeply interested in the future of education and learning processes, particularly because we have to face various crises today in the environmental, democratic and social fields, not to speak about the COVID-19 pandemic. It's scary, so how can education cope with that?
Thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure to talk to you about that. In 2015, the United Nations gave citizens, organizations and states a common goal to reach by 2030, which is the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 SDGs. And the fourth one is entitled Access to Quality Education. And we think that all children all over the world deserve to reach this goal because education is a human right. And the 17 SDGs help us to have a cross-cutting approach of all aspects of human lives and human progress. And this is why we want to talk about learning processes for everyone. And when you talk about crisis, it's interesting because they induce us to rethink all these learning processes, the role of education at all ages, all lifelong, all over the world.
True revolution of SDGs is you do not have to choose a priority.
You cannot reach the SDG if you try to pursue each one individually. What we say is that the arrows, the interactions, positive or negative, between the SDGs are more important than the SDG or the target per se.
All those problems related to SDGs are not, do not belong to just one country or one continent.
Reconciliation is a process over time.
Should we believe in the power of our imagination?
There's already so much happening, and so one of the what-if question is, what if we all knew about this, and what if we were all able to take those brilliant beginning of solutions and expand them and build on them in order to be able to achieve the necessary changes.
Let's listen to some game changers.
It is time now to learn from all those extraordinary experiments.
There are so many people who try to innovate, democratize access to education, facilitate access to knowledge and adapt to people's needs. How did you proceed to select them?
We try to build learning communities. That's why we think about in the mood for debate, in the mood for democracy. And we met many people coming from all over the world, notably in Qatar, for the World Innovation Summit for Education. Digital experts, academics, teachers, fieldwork workers, and we went also to Brussels, to Brittany and to other places in France and in Europe. And it's interesting because they have a specific experience of learning for children, for adults. Education as a SDG and for SDGs is all about democracy and fairness. Schools and universities should strive to meet children's and communities' needs when it comes to empowerment and equality, and encourage people to be creative all lifelong. That's what many of them do.
This has become my life project, trying to improve the quality of the most vulnerable schools in Colombia and abroad.
That with our vision, with education, what we can do, that education can make people change, transform the mind of the people. And coming from Afghanistan, living in a country that it was under such a horrible system, and still we are having a civil war inside Afghanistan. So my intention was really to try to transform these people. To transform these people, how I could do it as a one individual, I could not do it. The only way that I was thinking about it, that education is a vehicle, that vehicle can change these people if it's approached a good way. And what way? With the quality education, not any education. A quality education that teach people how to be self-sufficient.
And very fast, the program started to recognize that in order to support children who are on the streets, we would have to actually look upstream into broader problems that they were facing in terms of a lack of opportunity, a lack of access to education, and supported those children to be able to access school in rural sectors, which then removed the need for them to come to the urban centers away from their families and exposed to risk.
Especially the people who have been through war, especially the people who have been traumatized, especially the people that people driven them out of their houses. And so you must be very careful how to approach to give them any learning process. And once they trust you, then you can work with them.
So what we want to do is this shift from transmission of knowledge to social construction of knowledge.
We start to create a different narrative around what education is for.
And this is exactly what we did with Escuela Nueva, which means new school. It's one of the longest bottom-up innovations of the developing world that's still being sustained.
When experts talk about meeting young people's needs in education, we can see that reducing inequalities is empowering.
Yes, giving young people's life skills courses somehow is another meaning of sustainability. We need to trust young people. They invent tomorrow's education.
Les élèves apprennent à travailler ensemble. Ils apprennent à choisir leur examen ensemble. Ils apprennent à construire leur examen. Ils apprennent à élaborer leur projet ensemble. Et le plus important, ils apprennent à réussir ensemble.
We don't see learning as only happening inside a school. Learning is something we're all engaged with all day. The role of the school, the role of the educator is to help you process that learning, to make sense of it and think about what it means for you. It is not to say that you don't learn when you're on the streets, you don't learn when you're at home, you don't learn when you're playing football. All of that is learning. A good educator will say, okay, now what does this mean? What does this mean for you? Where do you want to take this? How do we build more skills on top of what you're already learning? And I think that's a very important attitude we try to inculcate in all of our teachers as well, that don't say that if they're not in school, they're not learning. Of course they are. But how do we capture that learning? How do we leverage that learning?
But it's the role of a mentor, of a facilitator, a guide, not a transmitter of instruction. So they become more human. The role of the teachers are more human because information comes packed in many other ways now.
Fundamental fairness is success when people are treated, children are treated respectfully and honored for what they can do.
And especially vulnerable children, they have to leave school, they have to come back, and then they miss class. So we wanted to make sure that the school was flexible and open enough to accept these children, especially children that sometimes have to participate with their parents in working situations.
Often, constraints allow innovation. When it comes to democratizing knowledge, for instance, or when it is about supporting children in learning processes.
Basically, Kiwix brings internet content to people without internet access. There's still 4 billion of them around the world. And even though everyone will say, yeah, but like in 20 years' time, everyone will have internet, I think that those 4 billion are actually the poorest in the world, the poorest half. So that's going to be a lot harder than getting the richest half to get the internet. So we need to bring that content to them. And how do we do when there's censorship, when data is expensive, or when there's no infrastructure? Then you need to think differently. You need to make a copy of those websites, educational websites, and then you bring them to them so they can store them on their cell phones, on their computers, or little hotspots for $30, and then you can broadcast it locally. You don't need to be connected anymore, but you have access and you interact with the website, Wikipedia, TED Talks, or MOOC, just as if you were connected. Same difference. So technically, we have what we call a scraper. It's like a little robot that goes to a website, identifies, okay, this is Wikipedia, and makes an immediate copy of it, like full copy. But when you're on a website, you actually have files here and there. It's kind of in the cloud. We compress it into a single file, and then you can store it and you can share it. You can put it on a flash drive and distribute it as you want. Kiwix as itself is a platform, so it runs on any device, cell phone, computer, or hotspot.
So I'm Nikhil. I run an edtech startup back in India called Stones to Milestones. And we work on early childhood reading. So helping children between the ages of 3 to 9 to learn to read in English. The idea is that if a parent uses it 5 times a week, every day for 5 to 10 minutes, he should see a remarkable improvement in both the skill and will of the child to read in English around that. So that's at home. In the school, we work one-to-one with teachers where we train them, we guide them, and we give them pedagogically appropriate lesson plans that they can execute within their classrooms to help children pick up the language in the early years. Around 1,100 schools, 200,000 children across 50 plus cities in India.
Because we ended up talking about 21st century skills. And this is why I say it's the school of tomorrow. So children are learning to learn, learning to take initiatives, learning to take risks, learning to follow instructions. But the most important is learning to work in teams, because cooperative learning essentially is working in teams.
On a pensé qu'il était préférable d'ouvrir des ateliers de formation pour les parents aussi. Et donc le slogan à l'école, au collège 4 Pressoir, tout le monde est à l'école. Professeurs, élèves, parents et tout le monde.
Okay, super. So definitely there's a stronger type of governance in the classroom and in a different situation where children are empowered and they are the actors of change with the teachers.
Le projet s'appelle Graines de reporters scientifiques. C'est un projet qui est en collaboration avec la fondation Tara, qui est une fondation de recherche scientifique. Voilà. Et donc le projet il est d'abord porté par eux. En fait, ils sont venus vers nous pour aider à la partie, je dirais, de médiatisation des productions des élèves. Le principe, c'est de faire réaliser aux élèves une vidéo de 3 minutes sur les questions liées aux océans et au climat. Comment on réalise une vidéo, comment on présente des données scientifiques finalement de type qui sont assez complexes pour les rendre accessibles au grand public. Le problème. On aborde des questions de la vulgarisation, de la rigueur scientifique, voilà, et puis de la mise en scène. Vous avez un petit 3 minutes présenté par un journaliste scientifique, vous avez les chercheurs et puis vous avez les vidéos des élèves.
Sur la question des médias et de nos usages au numérique, il m'a semblé crucial de pouvoir imaginer un projet qui fait le lien entre le temps scolaire et le hors-temps scolaire, l'école et la famille. Et c'est de cette envie et de cette conviction qu'est né le projet de la famille tout écran. Donc on a fait une enquête de terrain, on est allé à la rencontre des familles pour comprendre quelles étaient leurs préoccupations. On a voulu à la fois déconstruire le mythe du digital native, c'est-à-dire de l'enfant né avec les nouvelles technologies qui serait naturellement compétent pour s'informer. Et en même temps, dans la série, on montre que c'est Théo, donc le personnage, le petit garçon qui a 8 ans, qui va raisonner son grand-père, qui a viré un peu conspi et qui est très perméable aux théories du complot, pour dire que oui, en fait, les enfants, ils sont très agiles, mais ça ne veut pas dire qu'ils maîtrisent le sens de leurs usages et que nous-mêmes, en tant que parents, si on n'est pas experts sur le numérique, on a plein de choses à leur apporter pour questionner ces usages-là. Et de ne pas non plus stigmatiser cette jeunesse comme étant irresponsable et immature sur ces usages du numérique, parce qu'on le voit, les grands-parents et les parents doivent être questionnés.
It is clear that research should be more systematically mobilized in learning processes and for decision making.
So we have been developing a new educational paradigm. It's called Research Enabling Game-Based Education. And so what we're doing with this work is enhancing the paradigm of inquiry-based science education by combining it with game-based learning and citizen science. And so the students, when they are participating in a typical inquiry-based science education experience, it can be a bit like a discovery role-playing game, where the answer is already known, but the student is still investigating many of the critical aspects of the research cycle. But with the research-enabling game-based education, students are now able to explore problems that we truly don't know the answers to yet. Exactly. And we're also looking at, when I said a collective problem solving, how can we use this process of gamification, of gamified problems, to explore behavioral economics? So how many people will attack a same problem from very different perspectives. So we can study that in one country with one set of people, and then the same problem in another country with another set of people, and understand how that varies both in the demographics, the socioeconomic background, and the cultural influences.
Here is the report. As you said, that was the first evaluation report of the first 4 years, 2015 to 2019, of the Agenda 2030, of the 17 SDGs and their 169 targets. It was also a premiere in another sense, because it is the first time in history, that the United Nations gave the responsibility of an evaluating report to an independent group of scientists. For the first time in a UN report, it's clearly stated that reduction of inequalities, and not only income inequalities, but inequalities in access to major services like education, health, and so on, and also not only income inequalities in general, but also gender inequalities between women and men, or inequalities between the people with disabilities and the people who fortunately don't have any disease, chronic disease or disability, should be at the center of the agenda, and that reducing the inside countries' inequalities is key for eradication of poverty.
Education is essential to lower inequalities, to help people be free and autonomous leaders. Democratizing, developing new skills are needed to empower oneself and share with others all lifelong.
We are not just only depending that how to teach them to go from one level to the next. We are teaching them about how to be a leader, how to be an entrepreneur, how to really build a business, how to get involved in the political arena, how a woman could go to the political arena and be a good leader, what people expect of a good leader, how you can be a good citizen, what is democracy all about. These are all the issues that right now we are giving to the women.
One good example might be that we run a program in Nepal for some very, very marginalized girls from a lower caste community group who face quite a lot of discrimination in their communities, and they face a very high degree of gender-based violence both in and outside of their communities. And now for these girls, learning is not going to have meaning, nor are they going to be able to engage in learning until we address some of those issues they're facing. So it was very important for us, for example, to, as well as teach them literacy and numeracy, have a life skills course that really gave them a space to come in and say, this is what gender dynamics look like in my community, and support the girls to navigate those gender dynamics and learn through those kinds of conversations and discussions.
Les élèves articulent leurs recherches autour de leur projet et en rapport à un besoin de développement de la communauté, et ainsi on implique les élèves, les parents, les professeurs et la communauté. Nous avons développé un projet de reboisement par les arbres fruitiers et qui consiste à demander à chaque élève d'apporter tous les matins les fruits, les noyaux et les pépins des fruits qu'ils consomment chez eux. Donc, dans un premier temps, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Les enfants ne veulent plus consommer des produits chimiques chez eux. Ils imposent à leurs parents d'acheter des fruits naturels. Et maintenant, ils consomment ces fruits et ils viennent à l'école avec les noyaux et les pépins. Ils apprennent à l'école à sécher ces noyaux et ces pépins à l'ombre, puis ils apprennent à préparer des pépinières et ils choisissent maintenant des endroits du pays qui ont besoin d'être reboisés. Ils ont choisi le reboisement par les arbres fruitiers parce qu'ils se disent que si c'est les arbres forestiers, il y aurait des risques que les gens coupent les arbres pour faire du charbon. Par contre, s'il s'agit d'arbres fruitiers, ça va être plus difficile pour eux de tenter de couper ces arbres.
When we talk about developing competencies for life, what we mean is that we don't want kids that just take a particular knowledge for themselves and then keep it for them. But we want people that are able to develop competencies, so articulate those knowledge, skills, and values to be able to develop their life project with dignity and meaning, and also to positively contribute to society. And to do this, you need an approach of competencies development that is linked to real life situations. And these real life situations should break a traditional approach that school talk about reality.
In the Singapore context, we have started shifting different parts of our education system and trying to integrate formal education with informal modes as well as lifelong learning modes, creating new pathways for different individuals, wherever they might be in the continuum, to be able to continue to reskill, upskill themselves, to be able to get good jobs, keep the good jobs, and be able to pursue a good life through lifelong learning.
Because you cannot develop a competency for a person to be active actor for fighting against climate change if you don't know how to measure all the competencies that go around, which is to understand what is this, to have critical thinking on comparing the things that one say, the data and the reality, to be able to articulate this in a citizen commitment way, and to be able to act to do something on this.
The informal system, I think it's quite important as well. Many modes of learning happens at the workplace, in informal settings amongst peers, amongst experts, and our structured formal education system is not very well adapted to these kinds of modes of learning. And so we have to look at ways to augment the formal education system with different types of activities, celebrate different types of learning, celebrate different types of learners, and be able to hold up these learners as models of success for others to follow. What we're really trying to do is to create an entire movement within society, not just for people with jobs, also people without jobs, the older people, to be able to embrace learning as a way of life. In Singapore, we've launched learning festivals for a number of years. We call it Skills Future Festivals. And these are celebration of learning's activities in different segments of the population. But given this new paradigm that we're talking about, these institutions really need to shift the thinking of what it means for learning and lifelong learning. So the NUS and NTU as well has embraced a paradigm where students matriculated in the system undergoes not just a 4-year degree education, but they look at education now as 4 + 20. So alumni coming through the university system, after they graduate, they can keep coming back to university every year, attend courses, audit classes for free, up to a certain volume of training, and be able to keep upskilling themselves.
As we are becoming more and more mobile as well, what's relevant in one environment is no longer the only thing we need to learn. We need to be able to cope in a very global sense, don't we?